Hi, so for this tutorial, we will be rigging or binding this dress to the creator base set given by Zepeto, so that this dress will follow the movement of the character wearing it. I will be teaching you 3 ways or methods that you can rig this item. All these ways can be done together on rigging your item so that you'll achieve the best performance of the movements of your dress with the character. So the first thing you want to do is to drag your creator base set inside the scene. Now in this set, you have the bound mask and also the hips. This is the hierarchy of joints, of all the joints from head to toe, left and right, that influences the movements of the character. So we want that also to influence our items. The first thing you should do is to bind your dress onto the hips hierarchy. So click your hips. This is very important that you click your hips first and then shift select your dress. Then after that, go to rigging menu and then under the skin, click the options of bind skin, which is the small box beside this one. And when clicking that, you have these options that you can change the values. Now, for this specific selections, you need to bind it to the whole joint hierarchy. But if, for example, you only want, like for our item, you only want specific joints that will influence your dress, like for example, we want to omit the influence from the feet region and also on the head region, since this doesn't need any influences that will make the dress moved. Okay, so what you can do is to highlight those specific joints first. If you are going to select only specific joints, it is important that hips are always included on the selection, whether it is just a bag or a shoes. Hips should always be included in the selection. So click your hips from spine until the hand area. This is the joint of hand. Since we do not need the fingers joints, then we will not select those. Then here you select until this is the lower no, sorry, lower arm until to shoulder. Okay, do that also on the right side until hand only, and then until the shoulder. I also want the chest and then the spine and also the pelvis, and here you only need from upper leg and to the lower leg. You don't need this foot and toes joints. So select this and then after you select all the joints, you control select your dress. Go to skin and then bind skin, then selected joints. Okay, and then copy all these default options of these settings. And then when you're done, apply and close. Now when you move let's say this upper leg region, when you move, you can see that the dress are now moving along with the mask, but it is not that perfect because of these black regions, which indicates that the inner part of your skirt are poking out through the outside faces, so we don't want that. And also all these jagged lines We don't like that. We want it to be as smooth as possible. So what you can do first, um, way of smoothing or modifying the skin weights of your dress is to copy from the base mask. This one, you want to transfer the weights of this mask to the dress so that the values that it bends within the joints you rotate or transform, it will be transferred to the dress. So select your mask and then select your dress. Control select. Go to skin and then select the box beside copy skin weights. Here, you need to set the surface association to the closest point or on surface, meaning the faces or components that are in the closest area within this specific joints, like for example here, those are the one that will be binded on the or will be influenced by that joint. So you need to do that. Then for the influence association, we set it to name. Changing the influence association to name will make your dress to go along with the joints and even the scales of those joints, because in Zepeto we have different body types where it some of the joints scaled up or scaled down, so we want to our dress to follow also those scalings. So when you are done, click apply and then copy. Now when you rotate it, for example this upper leg, you can see that it is much more it is much better than the previous one, but you can still see black areas. As I said a while ago, there are several ways that you can modify the skin weights of your joints to the dress so that um, you will achieve a better performance or better movements for your dress. So the first thing is the painting of skin weights manually. So first select your dress, go to skin, and then click this paint skin weights, the box beside it. So here you have different options that mean different things. You can see all of those definitions on the official website of Autodesk Maya, and it will define all of these tools. But what we want here only is that all these lists are sort by hierarchy. All of these joints have influence on certain parts of your item. So for example, on the upper leg scale, you can see that this part is the region where it has an influence. And as you can see, there's a gradient of black and white. You can also change that to blue or red to blue, wherein the red or white means it is the maximum value of influences. That region has the greatest or has more influence from this selected joint. And when it is or black or blue, meaning that those regions has a list or has the least influence from the selected joints or have a lesser influences. Okay, you can see here different modes. We always use I always use paint mode so that you have a paint brush like of tool to paint over regions you want to modify its influences. And then in the paint operation, you have replace. It will replace the influences on the region you paint on depending on the value and opacity you set. So here you can change the opacity of the let's just use black and white. Here you can change the opacity of your brush tool, so it will be like this, and when you change it to maximum of 1, it will be very opaque. And for this value, you change this to according to the minimum or maximum value of the influence. So if it's 1, therefore you will create white influences, meaning you will increase the influence of the selected joints to the area you paint on. While on the other hand, if you set this to 0, then it will paint black on the region you paint on, which means it will decrease the influence of the selected joints on the area you paint on. So play around with the values and opacity so that you will have a much manageable painting strokes that will smoothen out the movements of your dress. So for the second way of smoothing out the skin weights of your dress, you can use the hammer tool. Click dress, go to skin again, and then paint skin weights. Hammer tool is located here. So what this do is you need to select specific joints. Wait, let me just rotate this so it is better for you to visualize its effect. And let's close this. Okay, now as you can see, we have black regions here, right? And we want it to go inside so that it will not poke through. So you can do what you can do is to use the hammer tool. First is to select the vertices on the area you want to hammer. For example, this one, maybe this one also. That, for example, and then go again to the paint skin weights options, and then click this hammer tool. What it does is that it will change the influences of these selected vertices according to its neighboring vertices. So it will follow the influence of the neighboring vertices, making the movement of your dress a much more smoother and better. Okay, and then next thing you can do to smoothen out the movements is to use the what we call the component editor. Go first, click the Windows menu, and then under the general or inside the general editors, click component editor. Then what you want to do is to select a certain vertices you want to modify. So for example, here we have this vertex selected. What the component editor shows is all the properties that your selected vertex have. So for example, the smooth skins. This will show the joints that are influencing on this specific vertex, and also it will show the influences values. So what you can do to modify is to click specific value, for example on the pelvis scale, and then we have a scroll option here where you can change the value and make your smooth or painting of skin weights an interactive one. So you can do this. So what you need to do is to combine all the 3 ways mentioned, like painting of skin weights manually or using the brush, the hammer tool where you select vertices and then hammer it so it will automatically be changed depending on the neighboring vertices, and then lastly the component editor where you select certain specific vertex to change its values or the influence values interactively. Now I will show you sped up process of how I rig this dress onto the hips of the Zepeto character. rigging. Thank you. For the next tutorial, we will be discussing how to export this to Unity and export it as a .zepeto file so that you can submit it in Zepeto Studio for approval.